working with more than 30 different freelance clients over the years, I've learned that the success of a project is often determined long before any work begins. Now, early in my freelance career, I was so focused on getting the work that I didn't always spend enough time evaluating the opportunity like I should have. If a client said that they wanted to hire me, I was just ready to jump in, excited that I had landed a new client. But over time, I realized that asking the right questions up front can really prevent misunderstandings later on. It also helps to prevent things like scope creep, unrealistic expectations, and projects that simply aren't a good fit for you, because that is the reality of being a freelancer. Not every project that comes your way is going to be a good fit. There are some that you're better off leaving for someone else. Now, I have learned to ask a series of questions to my potential clients. They really do help me decide if this is a project that I want to take on, if it's inevitably going to be a good fit. And these questions that I'm sharing are not theoretical. They're based on real-world experience working with organizations of different sizes, industries, and budgets. Now, of course, every freelancer is going to develop their own unique process along the way. But for those of you who'd like some help and value what's worked for me, then these questions are definitely worth trying out and implementing. I've found that consistently asking them has really helped me to make those better decisions, build better client relationships, and just overall made my business more successful and sustainable. Now, these questions are relevant to you, whether you're new to freelancing or whether or not you've been doing it for many, many years. I think that they're appropriate also to all freelancers in a variety of industries. So the first question is, what problems are you trying to solve? Now, the reason that you would ask the client this is because clients do often come to freelancers with a solution already in mind. Maybe they need a training program, they need website design, they need a social media strategy. But what you really need to unlock is the problem behind the request. That's going to help you to create a viable solution for them. For instance, why do they think they need this? What's happening in the business? What prompted them to seek the outside help to begin with? And sometimes the real need is different from the original ask. So the better you can understand the problem, the better you will be at determining whether you're the right person to solve it. The second question you want to ask the client is, what does success look like? This question has become one of my favorites because you want to know how they're going to measure success at the end of the project. Are they trying to improve employee performance, increase sales, launch something on time, reduce customer complaints, improve engagement? What is the real goal and objective, and how will they feel that they've met it? Because if a client can't define success, it becomes really difficult for you to know whether or not you are going to be able to meet their expectations. And if success isn't clear at the beginning, then my experience is that disappointment often shows up later on in the project. Next, who are the decision makers? This was a hard lesson learned for me. I have learned to never assume that the person I'm speaking with is the only person involved. One of my most nightmarish projects involved a business who put someone forward as the decision maker, and I worked very closely with her. We created a product that she was happy with. And then about halfway through the project, they decided that she really didn't have the authority to be the decision maker on this project, and they put in alternative decision makers who had a totally different opinion on how the project should go. This caused so much frustration, rework, extra time. As I say, it does go down in my memory as one of the more nightmarish projects that I worked on. And it's all because the decision makers were not firmly established at the beginning. You need to know who's going to approve the work, who's going to provide the feedback, and who has the authority to make the final decisions. Because if it's not the person who you think it is, you could end up in the same situation as me and have to do quite a bit of work after the fact. So definitely know who is involved. It's going to help you to establish a smoother process right from the start. The next question is, what is the timeline and is it flexible? Now, of course, every time you are doing work for a company, everything is urgent, right? It has to be done yesterday. At least that's how it sometimes feels, especially when you're in the freelance world. However, you want to establish before the project's even begun if it truly needs to be completed by the target date or whether there's any flexibility built into the timeline. Now, sometimes there's a hard decision. It is a firm deadline. Other times, the ASAP request turns out to be a little bit more negotiable than it initially sounded. Now, having this conversation also helps me to assess whether I can realistically deliver that work in the time frame. Because sometimes I'm really busy and I can give some time to the project that we'd be referencing here, and sometimes I cannot. Other times, the timeline just sounds so unreasonable to me that I don't even want to try to meet the deadline, so I just refuse just on that one point alone. The next question is, what budget range have you allotted for this project? I know that this is an uncomfortable question, but it's an important question. Discussing budget early prevents everybody from wasting their time, because sometimes a client has a budget that does align perfectly with the scope of the work, and sometimes they just don't. If the budget and expectations don't match, you need to likely adjust the scope, recommend alternatives, or determine that you're just not the right fit for this project. And that's a discussion that's better had earlier than later. Next, how do you prefer to communicate? I know this question sounds really simple, but knowing how a client prefers to communicate is important, because using the wrong method can cause frustration on your part and or on the client's part. Find out if they prefer email or weekly meetings or a shared project management platform. Maybe they just want occasional check-ins. Really, understanding the communication preferences can help to establish expectations before any misunderstandings arise. Doing this, in my personal experience, has also allowed me to determine whether their preferred working style aligns with mine, which is always a factor when deciding whether or not to take the project. Another question is, have you worked with freelancers before? Now, I don't ask this question to judge. I ask because it gives me insight into how much teaching and expectation setting may be needed. Clients who regularly work with freelancers understand how freelancers work. They generally understand timelines, revision processes, and just the realities that we deal with as an independent worker. But clients who haven't worked with freelancers before may need a bit more guidance on how the process works. I'm not saying that either situation is a deal breaker. I have worked with people who were brand new to working with freelancers and people who are constantly working with freelancers. And I've had good experiences with both, but it does help to set the expectations in advance so that you can anticipate where additional conversations may be helpful to the situation. Another question is, what happens after the project ends? So those of you who have listened to some of my other episodes know I'm always curious about the bigger picture. Where's this going? That is just how my brain works. Is this a one-time initiative or is it part of a larger effort? Are there any additional phases that you expect to follow this one that I would potentially be involved with? Understanding what's next really helps at least me better support the client and evaluate whether the opportunity fits into my broader business goals. Sometimes I am looking for an additional longer term client. Sometimes I'm looking for a one and done client. So knowing this up front is helpful. We all know that things do evolve and sometimes a small project grows into a long-term relationship, and then other times it is that one and done. Both can be great opportunities, but forewarned is forearmed. Is that how that saying goes? So overall, I found these conversations with these questions often reveal information that I never would have received in a project description or statement of work. They help to uncover expectations on both sides, on my side and on the client's side, along with identifying any potential challenges. They also ensure that both the client and you are aligned before the work begins. Now, can I promise you that all of these questions are going to make your project go perfectly every single time? Of course not. But I can confidently say that they have helped me avoid a lot of problems, build strong client relationships, and inevitably make decisions that help my business grow and thrive. So please get in the habit of asking these questions before saying yes, and you'll be better equipped to choose the right opportunities, establish clear expectations from the beginning, and build the kind of freelance business that is both profitable and sustainable. Because the goal isn't simply to get more clients. The goal is to build a successful freelance business with clients who value your expertise, who respect your process, and who are aligned. They are a good fit for you in the way that you want to work. Now, if you are looking for more information on what to do before you start a project with a client, you may want to check out the video on the power of asking, a freelance negotiation that paid off. I discuss something that I did to inevitably get a better rate on a project in that video. So if you think that'll be helpful, please check it out. If not, I'll see you next time. Take care.